Hello, darling listeners. Catherine Cole here, host of The Foretop. We had so much fun recording our Japan episode this month that we decided to bring you some bonus content. So I hope you enjoy this exploration of natto, a Japanese breakfast food. And we apologize if the sound quality isn't perfect, but we really learned a lot, and we hope you do too. Enjoy. We have Heidi Nestler here, the founder and owner of Wonpaku Nattō. Heidi is a former resident of Japan who has started the first fresh natto brand in the United States, and she's here to tell us what natto is and why we should try it. Welcome, Heidi.
Thank you.
And did I get all those details right? Is this the first fresh natto?
I'm not the first. I've been making natto for a very long time, but I brought it to market about 2 or 3 years ago, and there are just a few of us in the United States making it. There's New York Nurture Natto in New York and Megumi Natto in Sevastopol, California.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm the first in Portland, certainly.
So, okay, let's back up. What is natto?
So natto is a traditional Japanese fermented soybean. When you try natto, have you tried natto before?
I don't think so.
Okay, you'll remember, I think. But when you try it, maybe the first thing you'll notice is it's sticky, and that's from the fermentation process. And natto is typically eaten in Japan for breakfast. So a bowl of rice, miso soup, a little natto, probably some pickled veggies. So a lot of fermented foods right there in that breakfast. So, yeah. So, and natto is I think it's truly in that superfood category. And that's because of the fermentation process.
So lots of good probiotics.
Yes, it's highly probiotic, but it has vitamin K2 in it, and that's it's the highest source of K2, and it's the highest source of K2, and also the only plant-based source of significant K2, and so that's why a lot of people come to me looking for natto. So. What else? It's also high in an enzyme called nattokinase, and nattokinase is also good for cardiovascular health. So they take K2 and nattokinase and isolate those as supplements. So this is the real food, so it's always good to go to the real food.
And what kind of health benefits would K2 have? It's
K2 helps shuttle the calcium to the bones, so the calcium doesn't end up in the soft tissues or arteries, and so it helps give us strong bones, but also it's good for cardiovascular health as well.
How interesting. Yeah. So how long were you living in Japan?
Well, on and off. I was there through most of the 90s. I was there, I arrived in 91, had 2 kids there. And then we were there, I think we moved to Portland in 98 and then back for a little bit. So about 8 years, 6, 7, 8 years total. Yeah.
And so did you start making your own natto there, or did it become a part of your life?
Well, natto was a part of my life. I tried it maybe 30 years ago, and I liked it immediately. And, in Japan, we would eat a traditional Japanese breakfast and have it most days. And so I would say that I started fermenting vegetables in Japan. But most people in Japan do not make natto from scratch. There's a long tradition of making, pickled vegetables at home, but most people just buy natto. And there's so many to choose from. It's like the cereal aisle. It's refrigerated, and there's different nattos with different sauces. And so I only started making natto when we returned to the United States and couldn't get fresh anymore. So natto that's been imported from Japan here is frozen. And it's, you can imagine a frozen bean. It's not going to be as tasty. It's kind of, the texture changes.
And does that kill the probiotics?
It doesn't kill the probiotic, but it does affect a lot of the health properties of it. And actually, I had just learned that recently. I already had a product on the market when I learned that. I mean, it's intuitive almost that it would be better fresh. It certainly tastes better. But I think that a lot of the things that we read about online about the health benefits of natto are true when you're looking at the fresh. So yeah, I started making it, and I used something like a yogurt maker. It was a yogurt maker to make small quantities, and then sort of figured out how to do that on a larger scale.
And it's a very cute little package.
Thank you.
So this is a 4-ounce package. It's a cute little cup. How many servings is that?
So that's actually 4 servings. So
you don't need much.
You don't need much to get the health benefits of natto. And that's how it would be presented in Japan. It's just a small little cup, probably about, like a big dollop most days. And you think of a Japanese meal, it's sort of, there's a lot of other little goodies on the table.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, so you prepared a beautiful little presentation for me here, and I'm going to have a bite in a second. It smells amazing.
Oh, yay.
Tell me you said you seasoned the natto a bit. What did you use to season it?
Yeah, so first I stirred it, and natto is naturally sticky, and when you stir it, it becomes stickier, and that sort of is the traditional way to the first step in preparing natto. And that sort of, I think, activates the umami and sort of gets those flavors going. And then, it becomes crazy sticky, like white frothy sticky.
Oh, wow.
And then I added a sauce to it. I made a sauce of tamari, toasted sesame oil, and a little touch of rice wine vinegar. Natto is an alkaline ferment, so I like to balance it with a little bit of something acidic. It pairs really well with kimchi, actually. I like to chop natto and mix them together, flavor it from there. But basically you want something salty, something creamy, and something a little acidic to kind of flavor it. But I've kind of presented it in a very true to Japan kind of flavors.
And you have it on a little rice.
A little bit of rice, yeah. It also is very tasty with something starchy like rice or noodles. And it's typically served at room temperature. Because of the probiotic benefit, you don't want to heat it terribly. You could stick it in a soup as you're serving it and not affect that. But usually, there are a fair amount of foods in Japan that are served at room temperature, so this being one of them.
So you can take it anywhere and just eat it anytime.
Yeah.
And you also, just as a garnish, it's quite pretty, you put some toasted sesame seeds and a little bit of seaweed. A
little bit of nori seaweed, and then some chopped up green onions. So sometimes at the Japanese breakfast table, you'd have a little rectangle of nori, and you'd sort of take your chopsticks around the natto and make almost like a mini sushi roll, just as you're eating. And that's actually a good way. Because of the stickiness, then your mouth is not meeting sticky for the first time, if sticky is an issue for you.
And it really does look sticky. You can see when you were serving it, it kind of pulls apart and it looks like gum or something.
Yeah. It's interesting. We don't have many foods like this in our culture, but I think that we have okra. And then sometimes when people see me preparing natto at a demo or something, they'll say, "Oh, is that like Rice Krispie treats?" I'm like, well, no. But I always tend to flavor it in a savory direction, but you could take it in a sweet direction as well. Yeah.
And the aromatics are very savory. We were talking about this earlier, that dogs love the smell of natto.
Yes.
It smells amazing. Okay, I'm going to have a bite.
Okay.
I can see it. I can see the kind of gluiness of it.
Yeah. I know, it's hard to talk for a few moments.
No, this is delicious. I thought it would be stronger.
Yeah, so one of my biggest obstacles, I think, when I'm introducing natto is if people have heard about natto and read about it. If you read about it online, you'd think it was the weirdest food on the planet. And people talk about the smell. As sometimes I'll say, it smells like stinky feet, and it's like, well, okay, something that's very aged might. The difference here is a couple of things. I think because it's fresh, most people in the United States have not had fresh natto unless they were in Japan. And the natto beans themselves, I use a, organic, non-GMO soybean, but it's not the typical natto soybean is a little smaller, so that's maybe creating a surface area. So it's a different surface area ratio so that it's a little milder. And then I also did search a lot for a good starter culture that wasn't, the ones I was working with that were available in the United States were a little temperamental, like they'd go up in heat. And, I was thinking, I can't make a consistent batch. So I did search for a little bit. And the one that I found and liked that I get from Japan is very consistent and mild and Yeah. So, I mean, it's a kind of reintroduction for people, I think, who've tried natto and don't like it. If I can get them to eat a few beans, I'm usually good. But how would you describe the flavor?
Okay, I have to have another bite. I was focusing so much on
the sticky.
On the sticky. I guess this is something. There must be an art to, because the little strings kind of come with you.
Yeah, they do. And it's interesting. If people have never had natto, I try to tell them.
It's like spider webs.
Right. I try to tell them before they pick up that spoon for the first time that it's naturally sticky from the fermentation, because sometimes people think it's a hair or something, and that really clouds your impressions of the food that you're eating.
Okay, so it's a little awkward to eat. Maybe not something you'd want like on a first date.
Or a challenge on a first date. I don't know.
But yeah, it's savory. It's earthy. Yeah, it does kind of remind me of mushrooms a little bit.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
There's even maybe a tiny little bit of sour or something, or maybe that's the seasoning you put on.
Some people detect a bitterness at the end, almost like coffee. And sometimes I hear nutty.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I also have a cold right now, so.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I don't know what it tastes like, but it's good. It's delicious.
And I mean, in terms of like the stickiness, if you rolled it into sushi and think about even the ice cream temaki style sushi.
Right, yeah.
You know, if you had that out and could make a little roll of it, that is a little easier to eat. Even on a date.
Well, thank you for sharing this with us. It's been really interesting to learn about natto. Well, thank you so much for your time, Heidi. This has been really fun.
Thank you.
And dear listeners, if you would like to learn more about Wanpaku Nattō, visit the website at wanpakunatto.com. And I'll spell out that URL for you. It's WANPAKUNATTO. And if you're listening in the Portland area, you can find Wanpaku Nattō at People's Food Co-op, Uwajimaya, New Seasons Markets, Market of Choice, Green Zebra Groceries, and Giraffe Foods, which is inside Cargo. Thank you so much to Heidi Nessler for sharing her natto with me. That was a really fun experience, and I hope you learned something and enjoyed listening. We have some more bonus content coming up for you soon, so keep an eye on your feed for the Four Top. Thank you as always for listening, and cheers.